The stars are right, and that means it's time for another episode of The Whisper in Darkness. I'm your host, The Man from Lang. Thank you very much for joining me today. On this episode, we are continuing with our review of the player cards in the Edge of the Earth Investigator expansion. This time around, we are taking a look at the Guardian and Mystic multi-class cards. There are 4 of them: Brand of Cthugha level 1, Brand of Cthugha level 4, Nkosi Mabati, and Cyclopean Hammer. There are spoilers throughout if you care about that sort of thing. If you enjoy what you hear, remember to like, comment, and subscribe. Just a quick reminder of how we rate cards here on The Whisper in Darkness. The best of the best get an Elder Sign, while the worst of the worst get an Autofail, and the cards in between get a +1, 0, or Elder Thing respectively. Cards that you build around or are good in one particular investigator get a Bless token, while cards that we believe are destined to end up on the optional list of taboos or that are just bad for the game get a curse token. Before we get started, I'd like to thank the patrons of this channel for their tremendous support. The Arkham Horror LCG community is amazing, and these people have gone above and beyond to bring you content like these reviews. If you'd like to support the channel's goals and see your name on this list, head over to patreon.com, sign up for a tier of your choice, and claim your rewards. That would be awesome. Special thanks to Cole Monroe Chitty for the art that graces the channel, Nicole Fiscus for the new Whisper in Darkness logo, and Nate Lost in Time and Space for the intro as well as the overlays. Thank you very much. I couldn't do it without you. Without further ado, let's get started. We are back with our reviews of the player cards in the Edge of the Earth Investigator expansion. This is the Guardian/Mystic multi-class cards. We are starting off with Brand of Cthugha. It's a 2-cost asset that costs 1 experience point. Combat skill icon spell trait uses 6 charges. As an action, you may fight. For this attack, you may use willpower instead of fight, and you get +1 skill value. If you succeed, spend 1 or 2 charges instead of its standard damage. This attack deals 1 damage for each charge spent. If you succeed by 0, lose 1 action, and it takes up an arcane slot. So we receive another triad, I guess, of spells. We've got the Brand of Cthugha, Divination, and Blur. They are all multi-class cards. The Brand is our fighting spell, quite similar to Shriveling, except in this one, it's kind of nice if you miss with the fight action, you don't spend the charges ahead of time. So you get to attack and then decide, oh, I hit? Okay, good. Now I can spend charges. It also gives you a little bit more flexibility than Shriveling does. Shriveling, you always hit for 2 damage. This, you can dial the damage up to 2 or down to 1, so you don't waste charges on those 3 health enemies like you tend to do with Shriveling. Not a huge fan of losing an action if I succeed by 0, but okay. What do you guys think about this one?
This is tough. You know, it does give you +1, which is nice. I think if it did give you a boost, this would be a lot worse, because you are paying an experience. Essentially, for Shriveling and Mystic, and in Guardian, you just have weapons. You know, you just have tons of weapons. You have Vicious Blow, you have B-Cop, you have tons of ways to deal damage, so you're not really concerned about modular damage in Guardian. But in Mystic, that is a pretty nice ability, because apart from things like Spectral Razor or I think Storm of Spirits level 3, you don't have a lot of ways of efficiently dealing with 3 health enemies. And like you were saying, Man from Lang, you don't really want to use your second Shriveling charge to be able to kill a 3 health enemy. So being able to dial the damage according to what you're attacking is nice. That being said, I think at 1 experience, it's kind of awkward, because you want it at level 0, like ideally. So you're gonna, in Mystic, you're probably gonna be playing Shriveling, and it's like Shriveling's probably just gonna get the job done. So are you really gonna be playing this card? Maybe, maybe not. You know, maybe it's worth it to you, maybe it isn't. It's worth mentioning that you have to take in the thick of it to be able to include this in your opening deck, so that you don't have to pay the extra XP tax with Down the Rabbit Hole. It is spell traded. I mean, so you can tutor it with God, that stupid ally, Arcane Initiate. But yeah, it's fine.
I feel like on paper, by the numbers, it's like kind of perfectly costed at 1 XP. It costs 1 less to play than Shriveling. You can dial the charges. You get +1 to the attack, which Shriveling doesn't give you. Yeah, it's not bad. And then
It costs 2 as well, which is,
yeah,
I think, critical to mention because Sixth Sense and Rite of Seeking, I both believe, cost 3. So you can play Sixth Sense and this in the same turn.
I don't think this is bad. The only thing that holds it back is that you can't upgrade this into Shriveling level 3. I think that's the only thing that holds this back.
So
But
I was initially kind of down on this. Not really down. It just sort of seemed, with Shriveling and with all the other various combat spells that mystics have, I was kind of like, oh, do we really need another mystic spell that does this? Then I was doing some reading, and I think this is actually a better Guardian card than a mystic card.
Sidearm.
Because it's a sidearm. It's like, I have my gun. I have all these empty arcane slots that I'm not using for anything. I slot this in. I shoot twice. I shoot with my gun. I deal 2 damage. I brand it with the other for 1 damage, and I kill it. I think the important distinction here is that you may use your willpower instead of combat. So if you are Mark and you have this, you are fighting at 5 still. 6. Right, corrected. 6. So you're not using your willpower, you can still use your combat for this. So I think if you look at this in terms of, as I was initially, as purely like, oh, here's a spell, it's a mystic card, it kind of looks, well, I mean, it doesn't really do anything different than Shriveling does, except for the fact that you're not going to take horror if you miss. You have the option to dial the damage a little bit. You don't spend charges needlessly. So there's, pros and cons. The more I look at it, the more I like this in a Guardian who is looking for something else to help them kill stuff more efficiently. So for that reason, I think it's pretty good.
Yeah, it feels like it's got a lot. For 1 XP, it's got a lot over Shriveling level 0. Like, just little nudges. I like this the more and more I look at it.
How would we rate this one?
I'm going to give it a 0. I think it's pretty good. It's definitely not your primary source of damage. At 1 XP, you're going to already have either a weapon or another spell as your primary source of damage. But that being said, like you were saying, Man from Lang, in Guardian, this is a pretty nice off-slotted weapon. You don't have to worry about it getting rid of your magnifying glass, so you can still investigate if that's what you need to do. Or maybe you have a 2-handed weapon or something like that. This can sit in a slot you don't care about and be an off weapon. In Mystic, it's kind of nice because you can sort of like get 4 uses out of it in a way. If you, say, kill 2-3 health enemies with it, that's fine, I guess. But other than that, it's like you're going to upgrade out of it, I think, at some point. So it's fine.
I also like how it seems to fit the theme of like Lily Chen. You can do like the Dragon Pole brand of Cthugha, Butterfly Swords, which also is about dialing damage, Enchanted Blade, which also has some dialing damage abilities. It seems to slot right in there.
And Lily gets her agility discipline too, and this is a different fight action that she can take.
Exactly. Yeah, another different fight action. Yeah, the more I look at this, the more I kind of like it. Like if you compare it to Shriveling level 0, I do wish you could upgrade it to Shriveling level 3, but I think from this, if we start with the base perspective of Lily Chen, I actually really like this card. So I think I'm actually going to give it a +1 between the fact that it fits really well in Lily Chen, but not a blast because I think numbers wise, compared to Shriveling level 0, this is pretty good.
I'm going to give this one a +1 as well. While I don't necessarily think I'd be playing this in Mystic all that often, it is kind of a nice Guardian card. And I mean, if you do pick up in the thick of it, and this is an option that you can pick up if you don't want to have to deal with Shriveling for whatever reason, if you're spending experience, if you're picking up into the thick of it, maybe Carolyn likes this, Nate?
See that? Yeah, it's not a weapon, which is nice.
And then, of course, you've got Mateo who can pick this up immediately without having to dip into the thick of it. So there are some options there, and yeah, I mean, it's certainly for 1 XP and 2 cost. It's cheap a cheap source of damage if you want to wield this with, another weapon to dish out some hits. That brings us to the upgraded version of the Brand of Cthugha. This is the 2-cost 4 XP asset. Willpower and combat skill icons. Spell trait uses 9 charges. For this attack, you may use willpower instead of combat. You get +2 skill value. If you succeed, you may spend 1, 2, or 3 charges instead of its standard damage. This attack deals 1 damage for each charge spent. And if you succeed by 0, you lose 2 actions. Takes up an arcane slot. Again, follows a pretty typical upgrade for spells. You get a slightly bigger skill value bonus. Gives you the option to deal more damage, although again you can dial that damage up or down as necessary, so you're not necessarily wasting charges. You get to choose how many charges you spend after you know you've hit or not, which is pretty nice. Losing 2 actions is worse. Hopefully that won't happen that often, especially if you are fighting something that could put you in a kind of an awkward spot, because you're probably going to get attacked at that point since your turn is basically over.
I think it's good too. I just wish it costs 3 experience. I think at
I agree.
4 it's a little tough, just because like in Guardian, again, you once you cross that like 3-4 experience threshold, you start to think about cards like Flamethrower and Hammer and stuff like that, and it's like,
but it does cost 3 with Down the Rabbit Hole.
True, and I honestly think that is the reason this card costs 4 experience to begin with, is because they were designing with that in mind, which I don't
To be
like.
honest, I think we had the theory earlier that the gold cards are overpriced just for being gold.
Mm-hmm.
I hope that's not the case.
I'm pretty sure it is. And I may be wrong, but I'm pretty sure I'd Drawn to the Flame, when they had Maxine on the show at the end of the Innsmouth campaign, she confirmed that multi-class cards were going to be in the expansion, but that the cards had to exclusively feel like they were of both classes. And I think because of that, that sort of hamstrings the design of not only the cards themselves, but the experience level of them as well.
Yeah. I think the fact that this thing can do 3 damage is part of why it seems kind of hamstrung, to be honest, because 3 damage seems pretty special now. Personally, I don't like this one so much because when you hit 4, you might as well spend 5 on a superior shriveling level 5 or spend 5 on a superior gun. Yeah, at 4 XP, it's your primary weapon, and you've got better options out there. Also, it doesn't compare very well to Enchanted Blade level 3, which gives you +4 to hit for 3 damage. Yeah, you only get two 3 damage shots out of it, but it costs less XP and gives you +4 to hit. Yeah, it's just like, this doesn't compare well to the things around it. Like, maybe to Shriveling level 3, but that's about it. Yeah, this one I don't like so much. I wish it cost 3 XP. But then if it costs 3 XP, then it can't do 3 damage, because then that would put it as strictly better than Shriveling level 3. Man, I just see this over and over. It's just like attack cards just like are in this trap based, are in this design trap based on the other cards that already exist. Man, they're just running out of room to design assets that deal damage.
How would we rate this one?
This one is more difficult to evaluate because of the investment and experience you have to make to put it in your deck. And I don't ever see myself paying for experience for this. Like we were saying in the level 1 version, I'm likely already either playing a level 0 weapon, or I'm playing Shriveling, or, one of its various cousins. And at that point, I'm probably just going to upgrade into those because they're just better at what they do. And this sort of just gets left by the wayside, I think. While the level 1 version is nice because it fills a particular niche, this is sort of like taking third wheel to the more primary upgrades. So I think I'm going to give it an Elder thing for that.
Yeah, I'd agree. By the numbers there, it's kind of overpriced, but it's not bad. You got 3 attacks that deal 3 damage. Yeah, that's pretty good. I mean, it's not a very good primary weapon, but if you happen to have the 4 XP, you could do a lot worse. So yeah, I'd give it another thing.
I'm going to be a little more bullish on this one and give it a 0, simply because I think if this is your goal, say Father Mateo picks up 2 copies of Arcane Research and down the rabbit hole with the goal of upgrading to this, he drops it to a 1, am I correct?
So can I stop you right there?
Yeah.
Arcane Research and down the rabbit hole existing does not make this card better.
True. I wouldn't pay 4 XP for this. I think it's 2. 4 is, as we saw with things like Quick Draw Holster, as soon as you hit 4 XP, it gets too much.
It's got to be core to your strategy.
It's got to be pretty important. Yeah. I'm still going to stay bullish on it. I probably would only, I play Arcane Research in most of my Mystic decks anyway, and unless I was going into the thick of it for something, I'd probably play it still in a lot of Mystic decks. So I'm not going to pay full price for this thing, and I think it's okay if you're not paying full price. But again, I don't think the differences between the brands and, say, Shriveling or any of the other combat spells we have is great enough that I would go out of my way to get this. Like, I'll probably still just put Shriveling in every deck anyway and maybe try this out in other builds. That brings us to an ally, Nkosi Mabati, the enigmatic warlock, 4-cost asset that costs 3 XP, 2 willpower skill icons, the ally and sorcerer trait. As a response, after Nkosi Mabati enters play, name a non-Elder Sign Chaos token with a symbol. Until this card leaves play, the named symbol is your sigil. As a response, when an investigator at your location reveals a cultist tablet or elder thing symbol, exhaust Nkosi Mabati, search the chaos bag for your sigil and reveal it, instead returning the other token to the chaos bag. He has 2 health and 2 sanity and takes up an ally slot. So you can name bless and or curse tokens as your sigil. So this is one of the few cards in this set that actually deals with bless and curse, which if you're playing somebody like Sister Mary might be useful, or if you're playing with say a mystic who's using Ides of Chaos, Shroud of Shadows, or Armageddon, that might be useful. Again, Jim could name Skull as his sigil to get a little bit more value there. One of the nice things about this guy is that you can use him to avoid potentially dangerous tokens. The one that always comes to mind is the tablet in Lost in Time and Space, which causes Yog-Sothoth to attack you. You can basically pick any token other than that, and so whenever you draw a tablet, it would be your sigil, and you could avoid that. That's pretty specific, though, and doesn't happen in a lot of cases. And the other thing about this guy is he's one of the only very few ways that you can manipulate chaos tokens drawn by other players than yourself. I know some of the covenants do it, but most chaos bag manipulation is you and you alone, and this lets you do it for other players at the table. What do you guys think?
I don't like this card. It costs 4 resources as well to get I feel, pretty middling effect, honestly. Unless you're, like, really building around Chaos Bag manipulation, say you're playing things like Jewel of Aurelis, and you want to be, like, revealing those tokens so that you can get resources and cards. This is pretty meh. Like you were saying, Man from Lang, apart from specific scenarios where maybe one token is really nasty over all the others, they all feel pretty equally nasty in most scenarios. So kind of picking one over the other doesn't really matter a lot of the time. And apart from those skill tests, he doesn't do anything.
Yeah, 3 XP is the level where you start seeing allies that give you 2 stat boosts. Like Greta, Ikiak, Lola Santiago, Peter Sylvester, but he's level 2. That sort of thing. So in order to justify playing Nkosi, like, you've really got to be making use of that ability, like, all the time. Outside of that, I wouldn't play this. because you're just trading one bad token for another bad token. So I could see you playing this as a Mystic if you're going if you're playing Gem, of course, which is obviously the little bone that's being thrown here is for Gem, or if you're doing the curse spells from Innsmouth Conspiracy. Why isn't this guy in Innsmouth Conspiracy?
I was thinking that too.
Yeah.
Another issue I think with this deck is like even if you want to play Nkosi, you probably also want to play Olive McBride, which takes up the ally slot. So now
Right.
you have to consider taking Charisma, and that's another 3 XP tax on that style of deck, and that's kind of a bummer. I guess another bone could be to Jacqueline as well, because Jacqueline has the ability to reveal a bunch of tokens, but again, very specific decks that you're building it in, and again, when you're not drawing those tokens, it's not doing anything for you.
Yeah, I guess I guess if you're playing it in a Blessed deck or a Curse deck, then I can see why you would play this. It seems fun. You know, it's like you spend 3 XP, which is not too much to kind of really buff out your Blessed Curse deck. Yeah, this seems fine. Bonus points if you really want to be a bro and you play Mateo and you name Tentacle.
That's true. You can do that. That's some big brain move right there.
That'd be hilarious. I want to see someone do that, just like in a standalone. Just do that once. Yeah, this guy feels like he should have been in Innsmouth Conspiracy. But that being said, you know, given that you're playing a Blessed deck or a Curse deck, like this isn't bad. Yeah, like it kind of fits the thing, which is why I'm just gonna preemptively go right ahead and say it's a bless. Like it's a big bless. Like you really got to justify this guy, you know, in order to by going all in on a symbol in order to make this guy work. I think.
Yeah, I got to agree. A blessed token feels appropriate. Like you're definitely going to build around trying to get that ability off and having that ability be useful.
Yeah, this guy has bless pretty much written all over him, although he doesn't have the bless or curse trait, which is kind of funny, I guess, because that seems like the obvious use, as well as Jim. Yeah, I mean, the biggest problem is he doesn't do anything outside of skill tests. Yep. And even when he does work in skill tests, you are kind of swapping a bad token for a bad token a lot of the time, unless you are playing with blesses. And so you're kind of damned if you do with him. It's just like, sure, you evaded the tablet, but I forget what it is in Lost in Time and Space. I think the skulls are like a minus depending on how many locations are on the table or something like that. So it's chances are, if it's late game, you're going to fail anyway, at least, but you're not going to get attacked for huge amounts of horror, which can kill you in that scenario if you're not careful. But yeah, he's a bless. He's if you're playing a bless or curse deck or Jim, you might want to look at this guy. He's got 2 health and 2 sanity, so he can take a punch and stick around against ally hate. But yeah, I don't think this is at 4 cost especially, and 3 XP, the ally slot is just so competitive that you really need a good reason to be building around this guy.
I wish he boosted willpower. Then I'd feel a lot better about it.
Yeah, I think if they gave him like +1 willpower or something like that, would have been... At least it would have felt like, okay, he's actually doing something all the time rather than just some of the time. That brings us to the Cyclopean Hammer, the flavor of the month in Arkham Horror. 5 cost asset that costs 5 experience points, 2 willpower skill icons, 2 combat skill icons, the item, relic, weapon, and melee traits. As an action, you may fight. Add your willpower to your skill value for this attack. You deal +1 damage for this attack. If you succeed and the enemy is non-elite, you may move it 1 location away from you. If you succeed by 3 or more, instead deal +2 damage and you may move the enemy up to 2 locations away from you, and it takes up 2 hand slots. Just a point of clarification that this does hit if you succeed by 3 or more and you hit an elite enemy, it still deals 3 damage. It's only the movement part that applies to non-elites, so you can still hit bosses for a ton with this. One of the best, if not the best, weapon in the game. High combat skill bonus with willpower, damage potential, high, doesn't use ammo, which is a big plus if you're in charge of monster slaying. People have been attaching reliable and enchant weapon to this to for even more devastating hits. Moving an enemy is a good way, almost as good as killing it sometimes. Play this with well prepared, and you've got 2 willpower and 2 combat skill icons on the table. Have they backed themselves into a corner, Matt?
Yes. I've thought about this and talked about this a lot. So, full disclosure, I am a playmate of Start With The Name, who is the most prolific and most recognized deck builder on Arkham DB. And he's spent a lot of time and a lot of tweaking and a lot of testing of his deck. And wow, just when it's showtime, the name excludes me. 21 Thumb Street, which is totally worth putting on screen right now. That deck is hilarious, but it's a Zoe deck that's all about getting the hammer and doing lots of stuff with the Cyclopean Hammer. The hammer is very, very strong. Like, I've seen it in play quite a bit because, as you say, it's the flavor of the month, and we in the UK, we got it pretty early, so we've been playing with the Cyclopean Hammer for a while. It's very strong. The combo with Enchant Weapon is too strong. 4 damage attacks with Enchant Weapon letting you add double your willpower, like, pretty much ensures you're gonna hit that 3 overage and get 4 damage attacks. That is too strong. I think it's Enchant Weapon that's overpowered, though, not the hammer. The hammer is like a creep up in power. It's the new flamethrower, to be honest, but you gotta work at it because succeeding by 3 is not just a given. You gotta actually put effort into it and add cards to it. Kind of like flamethrower, you gotta give it extra ammo, and you gotta be engaged with the things that you're hitting, that you're dousing in flames. It's the new flamethrower. That it's the strongest weapon in the game, but it still seems kind of appropriate for Arkham Horror, the card game, given that it's two-handed, given that it's 5 XP, given that it costs 5, given that Time Worn Brand exists. Melee weapon design is in such a tight corner right now because this card, by being what it is and costing the XP it does, it had to be stronger than Time Worn Brand, but also it's tiptoeing right up there, up against Lightning Gun and Shotgun and Flamethrower, all these other 5 XP Guardian cards. Yeah, it's just this game's in such a tight design space now for weapons. We're the hierarchy.
Yeah, I mean, this card pretty much relegates Lightning Gun into obsolescence.
I disagree for very specific reasons, but it's a very specific. Okay, so I think if you don't, the thing about Lightning Gun, the reason why I like to use it is because it means I don't have to take beat cops, and I don't have to take any other way to boost my attack. The thing about Cyclopean Hammer is, even if you're someone like Leo Anderson, you're still attacking at 8 for base of 2 damage. You got to push it to get to 3. So what Lightning Gun lets you do is you don't have to push it to get to 3 because the Lightning Gun just gives you +5 to your attack roll. Your not attack roll. I'm thinking D&D. Your attack to deal 3 damage. So I think Lightning Gun still has its use in that you don't have to spend extra XP and extra slots on supporting the Lightning Gun to get it to do 3 damage, like you do with the hammer. That being said, if you do push the hammer and devote slots to it, it is incredibly good.
The issue with that argument, though, is that you only get 3 shots with the Lightning Gun.
Yeah.
So you have to really use those sparingly, and the issue with the hammer is that you don't care because it doesn't have any uses to it. Yeah. And by and large, that's been the balancing mechanic with weapons, is that they have some sort of limitation to them, whether it's ammo uses or some sort of restriction in how that damage is done. And that was part of the reason why Machete was so good early in the game's life, was that Machete was just basically unconditional free damage. And, the hammer essentially does the same thing. And like you were saying, the combo with Enchant Weapon just, catapults it into ridiculousness.
Yes.
Because it's now all of a sudden you're fighting at 12 all of a sudden, and you're dealing 4 damage pretty reliably. Because even bosses only have 5, maybe 6, maybe every 6th, 7th scenario you might fight a 6 combat enemy, but by and large, even still, you're still 6 up on that test, so you're likely to pass by 3. So yeah, it's just nuts.
Yeah, it's the strongest weapon in the game,
and it has the relic trait, so it also kills those annoying enemies that Guardians had a tough time dealing with, like the poltergeists and things like that. It's like it trivializes that whole mechanic too.
So I guess the question I have not had the pleasure of playing the Cyclopean Hammer yet, but I mean it's pretty obvious just by looking at it that it's good. You throw enchant weapon on it, it gets better. Is it too much? Have they gone too far? I mean, if we didn't have a curse token, this is obviously an elder sign, even for 5 XP. But is it a curse? Does it go too far?
I think this needs to get tabooed because flamethrower is tabooed. Like I just don't see why you would taboo flamethrower and not this.
I don't even remember the taboo on flamethrower.
It costs more XP.
Oh, then yeah. Like if that's your philosophy, like yeah, of course this should cost more experience. I almost feel like this card should be exceptional.
I don't know about 10 XP though. Yeah,
maybe make it like 8 XP, like 4 experience exceptional. Mm-hmm. That way, you have to really dedicate the whole deck around finding the one hammer.
Okay, that would make sense.
And I think the other issue is that you could have 2 investigators have hammers because it's non-unique. So now all of a sudden you're just
the Hammer Brothers.
Yeah, you're just bopping things back and forth. I would love to see a scenario where one person with a hammer is over in one location and another one's at another location, and they just bop the enemy back and forth to each other.
If it survives that long.
If it survives, yeah.
Yeah. I think it does enough damage to, like, it kind of overwhelms, like, old campaigns where, like, 3 health enemies were considered tough. I mean, what a world we're in now. We're like, but that's the thing. We're also been getting a lot of 3 damage options, even down to level 0 stuff like Spectral Razor. Like, the power creep has set in, you know? Like, it's happened. Yeah, and so like I do think that enchant weapon needs the taboo though. If I were to taboo the combo, I would taboo the enchant weapon part of the combo because I think that's what actually breaks this. I think it's an elder sign. It's like it's power creepy, but like the game is already going in the direction where 3 damage is getting handed out a lot. You know, we're seeing it all over the place now.
Mm-hmm. I do feel like the move aspect of it is basically flavor text as well.
Yeah.
Like you're just pounding things in the head with this thing. You're not gonna move them. You might move the occasional enemy, but like that's very rare.
Yeah.
Yeah, there aren't many non-elite enemies that are gonna stand up to a hit from this and still be worth moving anywhere. So Matt gave it an elder sign. How about you, Nate?
I'm gonna give it an elder sign too. My reasoning being is that weapons are, in essence, reactive cards. You're using them to not lose. You know, yes, there are enemies with victory points, and it's a nice reward for doing something that the game forces you to do. But you can always evade enemies. That is an option available to the player. And I think for that reason alone, if this was a card that scooped up a bunch of clues or, you know, kind of broke some sort of more integral part of the game, I'd be willing to throw a curse token at it, kind of like Forced Learning or Eon Chart, which we'll get to at some point. This is fine to me because there always has to be a weapon at the top, and whether it's flamethrower, whether it's lightning gun, whether it's hammer, there's always going to be something. And this is fine.
Do you think that this deserves to join the taboo list like flamethrower?
I feel like if their philosophy is we want 4 reliable 4 damage to cost 8, and this technically is reliably 3 because it does kind of rely on enchant weapon. You know, I think it's probably should cost 6, but that's like, you know, difficult to evaluate.
I'll give it an elder sign. I haven't played with it yet, but I don't really have a problem with big weapons as much as I have problems with things that fundamentally either mess with the encounter deck in some ridiculous way or allow you to skip the mythos phase or break the game in those fashions. I have less of a problem with the weapon simply because you still have to hit. And the auto fail is still in the bag, and this doesn't stop that. So you can still take a swing, and you can still miss.
And you can't play snipe. You can't play snipe with this.
Nope.
No. Yep. They thought of everything.
They thought of everything.
So yeah, I don't have a huge. I mean, I could see them maybe tacking on experience to this, but this brings me to the biggest issue I have with the taboo list is that I think it's been shown, at least by, you know, when we reviewed our seeker cards, and many of the comments we received were, well, we can just use this card to break Pendant of the Queen. And so that tells me that adding experience to cards doesn't matter, because people will just buy them anyway, and you're not really making a sacrifice to that. So they could make this cost 6 or 7 or 8. I don't think it would matter. People would still buy, pay whatever it costs to get that. And so, yeah, we'll see. I mean, maybe the enchanted weapon will get taboo just to bring it down a little bit, but then again, are they just going to make it cost more XP? Who knows?
That would be a really poor decision, I think, because my issue with the taboo list is that, like, I personally feel that adding XP does not solve the issue. It just, like, you're just taxing the player at that point. It doesn't change fundamentally what it does. It just delays the inevitable.
I think if I had to right now, like, make a wish for enchant weapon, is I would wish that it either added your willpower or did an extra damage. Then it's like, okay, if you play it on a Cyclopean Hammer, if it either added, you could either swing for the fences and go for 4 damage by not adding your willpower, or you kind of guarantee the 3 damage by adding your willpower, but not both. I think that's the way to do it.
I guess the only issue with that, though, is you could always take the willpower and always get the 3 damage.
Okay, I guess. I mean, that's kind of par for the course now, where weapons and combat cards are going. Like, we've been seeing them in this set.
Yeah, and you are paying 8 experience for that, so...
Yeah.
That's going to do it for our look at the Guardian and Mystic cards in the Edge of the Earth Investigator expansion. Let us know in the comments down below if you agree or disagree. Any final thoughts on the Guardian and Mystic cards? Some pretty interesting ones. Better than the Guardian Rogue ones, I'll give them that.
True. Also better than the Guardian Seeker as well, I would say overall. Brand is pretty interesting. And Hammer is... It's Hammer. It's the new best weapon. It's, you know, it is what it is.
Yeah, and I like that Nkosi exists. He's not perfect, but I like that he exists. And he helps out certain decks that needed a little bit of boost. So it was nice to give them a toy.
That's going to do it for this episode. If you enjoyed what you hear, remember to like, comment, and subscribe. If you need to contact me, I can be reached at manfromlang@gmail.com. I'm also on Twitter at manfromlang. Until the stars are right, keep your shotgun close and your elder sign closer. Take care out there, and happy investigating.